Many of you will recall in high school, perhaps high school, reading a book by Nathaniel Hawthorne called The Scarlet Letter. And she has to wear the letter A on her dress prominently as she goes about living her life. And what that does is it identifies that she has committed this crime. It was a crime then. And all of her peers know, the whole community knows. They don't have to spend a lot of money putting her away in prison because she's required to wear her scarlet letter A on her dress. So when I look at these criminals walking around or hobbling around with these medical boots on, I have to chuckle because I saw one creator call it the Freedom Tracker. And he's got you can see the picture on the thumbnail. It's got the GPS and it tracks you. It's good for 20 years to life. It's quite humorous, but it actually tells me that maybe we should all look at a new way to imprison people because we have so many criminals in D.C. I just don't know how we're going to have enough prison space to take care of all this. Plus, I'm really not interested in spending more money for Vanguard to earn profits off of their private prisons. So this idea of a freedom tracker is really appealing to me, Thomas. I want to see more people just hobbling around with their freedom tracker.
Well, this is so funny, Betsy, that you bring this up and you show the picture of the freedom tracker. Let's remember McCain can't seem to remember which Achilles heel he had worked on because his freedom tracker boot is on his left foot still. It was his right foot that was hurt, and everyone knows this. Is he so senile that he can't remember? Hillary's still wearing a freedom boot, a gigantic boot on her foot because she broke her toe?
Oh, it's called a medical boot.
Yes, but you know what? I've broken my toes so many times I can't count, and I've never once had to wear one of those. That isn't what you do for a broken toe. So I like what you're saying. Perhaps it's a tether. And that means that the 264 criminals in the Congress who used the Office of Compliance to pay out $17 million to people that they attacked, perhaps raped, certainly sexually assaulted, and discriminated against in every other charge, those 264 people need to have a freedom boot on.
Yes, and then when they go and do their speeches, they're going to have to walk up on the stage with their freedom tracker on, and people will see it, and they'll go, oh, you're in one of those boots. Maybe we shouldn't trust you.
And Obama needs one on each foot because he's breaking the Logan Act by going out and promoting his policies still after he is no longer the president. That is illegal. He needs to have one on him. We can go on, but the point is the 10th member of MSNBC had to resign for sexual harassment and whatever. Let's remember, when they say sexual inappropriateness, I want to make this perfectly clear to you. None of those jerks, mostly men, would be stepping down if they hadn't raped people. Let me make this perfectly clear. They're quite wealthy. They could fight this in court. If they're stepping down, the crime is much bigger than the news is saying. So I'm going to call them rapists. So we have how many rapists? Last I saw, it was 91 rapists, because I assure you, those people who were sexually assaulting people had the opportunity, like an Al Franken. Had he been in a dark alley, I'm certain he would have taken his groping further. And here's Al Franken says he's going to go out and continue to fight his mission. His mission to what? To be a predator? Is that really what we're looking at? We need to put freedom boots on all these people so that we can keep track of them. Now I want to make a perfect example of the freedom book.
Can I say something? I'm going to say something first. But the nice thing about that, if we did it that way, they would have to pay for their own lodging and food. I mean, we're not going to take care of that. It's just a way to identify them.
The freedom boot is beautiful. Let me just go back to your idea of freedom boot. I just love that. The number one espionage case going on right now, which is being ignored, is Imran Awan, a Pakistani IT guy who worked for Congress. He had 80 congressmen and their staff's passwords. He had Debbie Wasserman Schultz's passwords for the DNC, for Congress, for the DCCC. All of them were ordered by Pelosi to go over to Imran Awan, and yet he has a tether on, because he was trying to escape the country after trying to rip off the Congressional Credit Union for a house loan. This is after he was charged with criminal conduct for IT scams, and 5 other people, his relatives and cousins and the people who were working for him who never came to work, who made more money than congressmen and senators make. Each one of them made more money than a standard congressman makes. And he didn't show up to work. He also ran scams, unbelievable amount of scams. The story of Imran Alwan is astounding. So he goes before the judge the other day, and the lawyer says, we want his tether taken off. He has a tether on. He can't go more than 150 miles from his house, and they need to know where he is because he already tried to flee the country. His lawyer tried to argue that this was taking away his right of freedom. No, what we need to see is that the freedom boot would keep these criminals, especially the governmental criminals, these insider criminals that we keep talking about, from leaving the country because they'll simply go to their offshore account, get their money, and go hide it. Trump declared war on them. He declared a national emergency. And it's on those people. Do you think Trump didn't send someone personally over to get the 264 names from the Office of Compliance to find out who these criminals are? Do you think Trump didn't request instantaneously the personal budgets of every congressman and senator to see if they have paid off criminal acts? I want to clarify this. It is perfectly clear. If you work for the federal government or the state government and you are accused of any sexual inappropriateness, you must be relieved of duty and the investigation must be conducted by law, no choice, and you don't get to work until you are cleared. Why aren't those people relieved of duty? Why is a Bruce Orr simply moved? Why is a Lisa Page simply moved? Why is a Glenn Simpson who now says, oh, he wrote all those lies about Russia to try to keep Nellie Orr from being targeted as the person he hired with her ham radio to listen to Russian broadcasts and to speak to Russians and to speak to Christopher Steele in Britain? Why doesn't Glenn Simpson go to jail? Okay? Why doesn't his wife, Mary McCoby, who says Glenn Simpson wrote the salacious document mostly on his own and tries to brag that he should be given full credit for it, then why doesn't he go to jail? He's being sued by 5 people right now, and he will go down because what he did and what he said is nothing more than slanderous behavior, trying to hide behind the FBI and the Department of Justice.
You know, the other thing I like about this is the name. It's called the Freedom Tracker. And as you know, they've been throwing names out at us, we the people, for a long time that don't have anything to do with what the words say. Like the U.S. Patriot Act is anything from it, or the Freedom Act is anything from it. So this Freedom Tracker is really the antithesis of freedom, right?
Precisely. And that's the beauty of it. We don't want them to flee. We don't want them to leave the United States. We want them to stay here and face the people they've been ripping off.
Walk down the city streets and go to the grocery store with your freedom boot on.
Let's remember that the majority of Congress people have never had another job. They couldn't get a job. So if they got kicked out of Congress while we investigate their predatory actions, they'd be out on the street because they wouldn't get to their offshore money and their $5 million, $40 million house. They'd have to sell it, just like Paul Manafort had to sell his house because of the persecution, the bizarre persecution of Robert Mueller, of his own friend. Remember, they are friends. Remember, they all know each other. So I say Paul Manafort will get off and nothing will happen, and that General Flynn will not need a pardon from the president. He will get no conviction.
Thomas, we have some questions from readers that have been stacking up. Now,
okay.
Folks want to know about Leo Wanta.
Oh.
So, I mean, the questions are, I have several questions, and, you know, if you don't know who Leo Wanta is, well, you need to Google it. But if you do, Thomas, what's up? Ambassador
Leo Wanta helped George Soros, help George Herbert Walker Bush and the Vulcans attack the USSR. They economically attacked them and they defeated them. That is why the wall fell. It had nothing to do with Reagan. It was George Bush Sr. who did that. Leo Wanta was just like George Soros. They were given huge amounts of money by the rogue CIA, and they went in and they manipulated the currency, and they manipulated gold, and they manipulated their markets until they had an economic crash. Leo Wanta came out of that and said, well, I gained as much as $5 trillion in doing this. I want to bring it back to America and give it to the taxpayers so they don't have to pay taxes for a few years. George Soros said, forget it, I'm stealing everything I can. And then he helped them again later go after Russia. And he also has gone after 14 other nations where he has destabilized their currencies in the same exact way. So Leo Wanta started writing about this publicly and saying, this happened, and I want the money to go to the U.S. taxpayers where it should go. Well, strangely enough, not long ago, one of our conclave members introduced me to the person who was working with Leo Wanta and writing a book, had worked with him for 5 years, had all the information, all the documents, and they were getting ready to do a complete expose on this issue and the way that the United States government uses rogue CIA elements to actually destabilize anybody they don't want to, just like we're doing, well, as we have done many times before. I won't get into other countries yet. But Leo Wanta seemed as if he was an honest guy, and then he started to get really weird. I got a lot of the material sent to me, and I researched it thoroughly. As a matter of fact, this person that I met wanted to give me her entire records on Leo Wanta so that I could continue and write the book. I researched it, and I found that I'm 100% convinced that Leo Wanta is no longer on this earth, and that a CIA shill has replaced him. Someone playing like their Leo Wanta, who obviously hasn't even read the material on Leo Wanta, is doing a very bad job of it, and now he's gone underground. I tried contacting this person with just a few remarks, and that was the last I heard of him and the last I've seen the fake Leo Wanta on the internet. Now, should we get that money and get it back? Yes. Good luck finding it. Good luck getting anyone to admit it. Until you get George Herbert Walker Bush indicted and convicted for crimes against America and against humanity for his work as in the Vulcans, the Vulcan group has destabilized the entire Eurasia and continue to do so to this very day.
Well, that is such a perfect segue into the next question, which is Barrick Gold. Now, Thomas, you've talked about and written about Barrick Gold for as long as we've been doing this, and so questions are arising now. One of our readers says, Barrick Gold is Peter Munk. Peter Munk is Sir Peter Abels, and he tracks that to human trafficking and drug trafficking. And he also mentions Peter Sutherland as being an insider. These are names that are coming up as folks that have resigned, that big list of folks and CEOs and key officials that have resigned. What can you tell us about Barrick Gold and that relationship?
Well, I hope I can be short on this one, Betsy, but this is one of the biggest ripoffs in the world. Peter Munk was targeted by QAnon as being someone else, Peter Abels, and that he is doing all this other stuff behind the scenes with a false name. Okay, fine. You don't need to. Peter Munk is an absolute outright criminal. He was sold two dead mines in America, gold mines that never produced anything, for next to nothing by Bush, Daddy Bush. And then within 2 years, Daddy Bush, actually within 1 year, George Herbert Walker Bush joined the Barrick Gold board. Well, it just so happens that instantaneously after that, Barrick Gold struck gold. And now, from two of the worst dead mines in America, and they've bought other mines, also dead mines. They have a mine in Switzerland that they mine huge amounts of gold. That's a lie. The entire Barrick Gold is a complete fake lie. Now, let's look at the number one founder, not Peter Munk. Peter Munk is just, one of these economic guys who is trying to be like the guy who really founded it, Adnan Khashoggi, who was the head of the Saudi Arabian secret intelligence. He was, of course, pointed at and is quite responsible for 9/11. Probably the number one Saudi Arabian we should be going after and putting sanctions on is Adnan Khashoggi, who is also the number one arms dealer in the world. He's the number one person that the CIA uses working out of Azerbaijan to this very day to use Silkways Airlines to bring weapons from other countries and ship them to ISIS in Syria and ISIS in Iraq, ISIS in all over the place. And of course, ISIS is being reduced now because $1 billion has been held back that Obama was paying to ISIS directly That's just $1 billion to keep them going. But then we were giving them all the weapons they needed through Azerbaijan and Silkway's Airway, which has now been proven. And anybody that wants to Google that, go look. I don't ever make up anything. Telling lies is too much time. I can't remember lies.
And also for folks, because you can't see Thomas, he does all of this speaking without any notes. Never do I see him with notes.
We must impress into our minds what evil is doing so that we can war against it. And once you see evil, it's so ugly you cannot forget it. There's no way to forget what I'm telling you. And unfortunately, it wakes up many people, and some people get shocked and run away with their hair on fire. But others say, oh, let's put the fire out and let's focus and let's say, oh my, we need to be awake and aware. We need to use our power not only to vote properly, but also to take action, to take legal action, to do things like Betsy's always telling you, to get the word out. We know that our word is going out far and wide because we see it all over the place, cropping up here and there.
And it's with the help of patriots at the other end. Some of you will take our audios and you'll do your own pictures on top of our voice and send it out to your audience and have as many hits as we do. Others will take our articles, reframe them in the way that your audience likes to hear it. And that's how we educate and wake up one another. Don't forget, now we also want to look at Peter Sutherland. That was another question that was tied to this.
Let's go back to Barrick Gold for a second.
Okay, because Peter Sutherland, we're going to go back to that. I don't want you to forget, he's apparently on the steering committee of the Bilderberg Group. And so that's what we want to look at. All right, back to Peter Munk.
Every person on Barrick Gold is a criminal. Period. When you track them, they're some of the evilest people that you could ever imagine, and their histories are long, and their biographies are the biography of a spawn of Satan. George Herbert Walker Bush is one of the evilest people that America has ever known. But that's the tip of the iceberg. He showed the Clintons how to do it. Barrick Gold is a fake. It's a front. They write paper gold off of no gold. They say they have gold in the ground. No, they don't. They say they have stores of gold. No, they don't. And this has been proven lately in Canada because Barrick Gold works through Canada. And recently it was revealed, and we've given entire audios and we've pointed this out on this subject, that recently Canadians have tried to get gold from the only gold bank in Canada. There was no gold there. People have tried to get their gold from Barrick. They tried to turn in their paper gold and couldn't get it. This is what happens. They say when you buy it that it's held in Canada in the Commonwealth. No, wrong. Then they say it's held in the Commonwealth. It's held in the what is the Rothschilds' holding of gold for the Bank of England is called the bullion vault, the gold bullion vault. Look this up. It's the only gold, it's the largest gold reserve in the world, or largest gold holdings in the world. Supposedly, it's all a lie. Next to America, of course, we have the largest, supposedly in Fort Knox. So there is no gold in Barrick. If you're buying gold from Barrick, all you get is a piece of paper. Go try to cash it in, and what they'll tell you is, no matter how much gold you've purchased, one person purchased $250,000 worth of gold, okay? They went to cash it in. They were told it wasn't there. They'd have to go to England. They went to England. They found they'd have to do an audit. Then they would have to...
It's kind of like getting your 401k out of Vanguard, and people who have tried it understand exactly what I'm talking about.
And every person that I've read 3 very detailed descriptions of people who tried to do this for significant amounts of money. One for $250,000, one for $175,000, another $125,000. By the time they got to England, to get someone to audit the gold, the surcharges to get permissions to apply to the government to move the gold to America, and all of the other fees came to the exact amount that they had purchased, $250,000 in one case. The entire amount would have to be paid to get that gold. So in other words, no gold is leaving that vault. So
maybe because there's no gold.
There's no gold. Now, the gold is held in Zurich. It's held at the end of there's a place called the Zurich Gold Vault, which is now... Of course, America has allowed the SEC and the FTA and all these different groups went to Switzerland and said no more numbered accounts. But now they have numbered gold accounts, gold bullion. So now the greatest reserve of gold bullion in the world is in the Zurich numbered accounts so that it can be hidden by the people who own it. But what does Barrick Gold say? They say they dig up a huge amount of gold just a couple of miles away from where that Zurich gold bullion vault is, the numbered vault. Oh yeah, right? Is that what they do? They supposedly dig up gold that isn't there, process it in plants that aren't there, leave no trace of any mines anywhere, and yet move massive amounts of gold supposedly into this gold vault. What's happening, folks, is that George Bush was CIA, and now Daddy Bush is rogue CIA. Barrick Gold is a front. Also, Glencorp is a front for gold, and also Frank Justra's gold mine, what's it called? I can't remember. It's a front too. Frank Justra and the Clintons now have an organization called the Justra-Clinton Sustainability Growth Initiative, which not only did he give $100 million from his Gold Corp, it's called, Justra's company, third largest gold mine in the world, Gold Corp. He has some gold. He certainly doesn't have the third largest amount. But he gave $100 million to this fund directly to Bill Clinton for Bill Clinton, getting Justra, a dead uranium mine in Kazakhstan, which he never mined, and that became Uranium One, which then became the huge scandal that that the United States government allowed Uranium One to be sold to Putin himself. So all of the mining scandals, including, what's the guy's name, Gertler, who was named as one of the first people. Gertler. He's a miner, gold miner, diamond miner, completely corrupt. He's on the list that Trump is going after. And he does business with all of these people. And he, of course, does business with Bill and Hillary Clinton because all the big fake gold and diamond miners all give to the Clinton Foundation. If someone like Jeff Sessions would look into that, they would find it so dirty that it wouldn't take more than 15 minutes to prosecute all of them.
Well, how about Peter Sutherland?
Peter Sutherland is another corrupt person, along with Adnan Khashoggi, who has his fingers in everything. And he, of course, acts with impunity in America with these gold mines, riding the paper gold when there is none. I mean, how much more of a criminal could anyone be?
Well, just look at the list of CEOs and prominent people who've resigned, and you have from their cushy positions, and you have to ask why. I mean, really. Well,
the fake gold funds the rogue CIA, and the rogue CIA brings in, this is the way that works.
Now remember, Betsy always says they're spoils of war. We need to take down the CIA, get their gold, and give it back to we the people, and we'd have all this financial stuff settled.
Yes, and you'll notice that every once in a while there'll be massive amounts of gold shipped out of the United States of America to other countries or shipped to us. There's no reason ever to do that. That's lie. That's not gold. That gold, if it is being moved, is only moved for a short period of time to bolster the assets of Deutsche Bank or HSBC or other banks for a moment. They shift the gold around. They do valuations based upon the gold sitting there, and then they move the gold later. But the rogue CIA uses their planes, Silkway and others, out of Azerbaijan, not only to do fake gold shipments, but also to ship the opiates out of Afghanistan and to help Hezbollah bring those into South America. And with the rogue CIA and Hezbollah, who we know now, millions and millions and millions, actually billions of dollars worth of drugs poured into the country while Obama allowed it. He allowed Hezbollah to bring these drugs into this country. And then what do they ship out in those planes? Human trafficking, of course. And we pointed that out the other day with the only airplane that was allowed to leave from Atlanta after the power outage happened to be an Israeli unmarked plane that had just come from Mexico, flew to Atlanta, Mexico, the place where drugs come into America, flew to Atlanta, the number one home of human trafficking in America. Then it flew to, where was it, England? And then Cyprus, and then Israel?
Yes.
Well, no. Hello, that is the
CIA's... It wasn't England, it was Belgium.
Belgium, yeah.
Okay,
it's the rat lines for the CIA, rogue human trafficking, gold, and drugs.
Now, if you have just tuned in to Betsy and Thomas, and this is your first or second time, and you're like, whoa, where are y'all coming from? What is this stuff you're talking about? may I suggest that you go to our YouTube channel, the American Intelligence Media channel, and we've put all of our Betsy and Thomas audios in a playlist, and you could start from the most recent and kind of work yourself back, because really we've been talking about some amazing things for a while that still haven't unfolded. So it's not like you're looking and listening to stale news. What you're really getting is a good solid perspective of what our real history is about. And then finally, Thomas, we're getting a lot of questions about Iran. They range from all over the place. You want to give our listeners a little heads up about what's going on in Iran?
Well, I'd like to hope that the new national emergency that was declared by the executive order will go after the people who support the terrorists. Because remember what Trump has done. He said he's going after any country that supports terrorists, even if it's Saudi Arabia, if it's Israel, doesn't matter, Iran. Now we know that Saudi Arabia is basically going into a full-scale attack against Iran. It isn't about their beliefs, even though that's at the heart of it. It's about the oil that exists between them and Qatar. Don't be surprised if Saudi Arabia makes a very big move towards Qatar so that they can steal most of the liquid gas that's in between Qatar and Iran, which is really the point of contention. But I hope Trump goes after Obama, because Obama gave $150 billion to a nation that is the number one nation that supports radical Islamic terrorism through Hezbollah, through their Revolutionary Guard, through Hamas, through supporting the Palestinian Authority, on and on and on. Hezbollah in Syria, on and on and on. ISIS, Al-Qaeda, whatever you want to say. Now, I'm not saying Iran doesn't have a good reason to be mad at us. I mean, we set up in 1953 a fake dictator there so that we could get their oil. And in 1979, when they kicked the Shah of Iran out because he was indeed a puppet for America, they became a theocracy, and a theocracy of radical Islam. And this is a very bad thing in this Trump age, because he is going after them full tilt. But he doesn't have to do too much. They're going to put the noose around their own neck. As I said the other day, already Iran is getting the picture. They're pulling Hamas out of Palestine, Hezbollah out of Lebanon, Hezbollah out of Syria, Hezbollah out of Iraq, and they're contracting everything back to Iran. But it was our criminal president, our mass murderer. I don't know any other name to call the man who killed 2 million people by bombing them without any congressional approval and put 56 million refugees as migrants who can then attack Europe. The attack of Europe was a planned side effect of Obama's bombing. He had no reason to bomb any of those people, and he had no permission to bomb any of them. And then he gave $150 billion to Iran so that they could continue their nuclear program, just as he gave $4.5 billion to North Korea to continue their nuclear program. Oh, that's right. Everyone we have problems with right now, whether it be Sudan, Nigeria, whether it be Libya, Egypt, whether it be Syria, Iraq, Iran, it doesn't matter. Obama went after all of them. Somalia, Yemen, all of them. He tried to create total chaos around the world. So what Trump is doing in Iran right now is the opposite of what the CIA rogue attempts to create color revolutions have done in many countries. We have overthrown at least 14 countries with the many different colored revolutions, like the Orange Revolution in Ukraine, and then the Maidan Revolution again a few years later in Ukraine. Those are all CIA rogue CIA and George Soros sponsored attacks on these nations. So now, instead of doing that in Iran, where we probably have the greatest motivation to do that, we are going the opposite of what Barack Obama did. Barack Obama armed them, gave them money. We know that the money given in the cash on the pallets, in cash from everywhere except America, as a payoff, that money went directly to Hezbollah. We know that some of the money went directly to France, even though there was sanctions, nothing was done. And what we are seeing now is Trump stood up and he has said and put out on his Twitter account different statements about Iran. So there is a revolution afoot in Iran, a real revolution, not a CIA, George Soros sponsored color revolution. It's an actual revolution of people who do not want a radical Islamic terrorist theocracy in their country. So What he is doing there is the opposite of what Barack Obama did, and I support it completely, and I do believe that this is the outcropping of his... He sent the whole world the message. I'm going after anyone who's conducting civil rights offenses against their people. I'm going after human traffickers. I'm going after all criminals. So these countries are on the run. And as I said, predicted this weeks ago, when he put his hands on that ball, get ready, Iran is about ready to go through a revolution, and it will be Saudi Arabia will go through a revolution. All of these theocracies will go through a revolution. That's a guarantee. No one thought this was possible. So once again, we have to thank Trump for his executive order, which says he's going after all these criminals. So good luck, Ayatollah. Good luck, Khomeini. Good luck, the supreme ruler, who is in fact an autocrat, a dictator of Iran, who is a nothing more than a theocratic imam, who is of course, he's a terrorist. He admits he's a terrorist. He has made so many terrorist threats to America that we would be justified in going to war with them, just like North Korea. But no, Trump is letting them implode upon themselves by simply calling out their crimes. And again, holding up the mirror to those people who are attacking him. And then who is it that falls? Not Trump. He's the phoenix. He loves the fire. It's those who are attacking him. So we will probably see in Iran what George Soros hates. Most of these rogue CIA, George Soros-sponsored color revolutions are to install a central bank in those countries. Look at the countries that are being attacked and undermined, and you will notice that they either have a national central bank or no central bank at all. As a matter of fact, look at the election in Russia right now. The rogue CIA, the George Soros NGOs, all flying the banner of humanitarianism and democracy, have been kicked out of Russia because, again, they tried a color revolution in Russia, but Putin stomped on it. Same thing happened in Turkey. Notice that these countries, anytime they want, can turn off all social media, even though in America, though we own all those wires and lines and cables, we don't seem to be able to turn off the radical Islamic terrorists in America.
It's the transnationalists, companies like Vanguard, that own that stock.
Oh, they absolutely do.
You really look and see who owns this stock, and it is very questionable. And it's also sitting on a very questionable foundation, because we now know, because we've done the work to see that the social media, as we know it, was stolen. It was a stolen patent. But that we've written on. I'll put a link. Any closing remarks, Thomas, as we exit this audio? Well,
Vanguard and the banks and brokers certainly get money from both sides when they start wars there. So that's what they do. They are not for America. These banks and brokers are certainly transnationalists. They're globalists, exactly as you pointed out. And they want chaos. They want war. And that's why Obama bombed those countries, and that's why the Congress, all 533 of them, I don't count Rand Paul because he was against it, but the other ones unanimously turned a deaf ear and a blind eye to Obama's attacks against these countries. What happened? The military-industrial complex got richer. Military-industrial complex got richer.
And freedom trackers for everybody. A new kind of stock I might look into.